You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
I feel like the kettlebells are my foundation for my mental health, my physical health. See, my philosophy on mobility, work, and stretching is the same as flossing. Like, nobody in their right mind would floss for an hour and a half every Saturday. But I find that feeling of like being breathless and just, you're gasping for air and then you revive yourself and you recuperate and boom, on to the next set. I love that. I feel so bad if I'm not exercising, and it can't be just any sort of exercise. It can't be just like, oh, I'm going for a walk or a bike ride. It's got to be at least every second day or 3 days a week. I need to kill myself to feel as good as I know I can. Once you've learned how to do lunges and squats, I feel like the swing is a lot more. Then by that point, the person's learned to hinge at the hips, and that person has done enough windmills that they figured out how to, stick their butt back instead of just, do the squatting type swing. I just love it. I really do. This is Keith Weber, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
All right, sir. Looks cold.
It is. This is my lake. Well, not my lake, but I live near it. And I just took a cold dip so I would be alert for the podcast. And it was a real, what a pain in the ass, honestly, because I had to cut a hole in the ice with a chainsaw and ride my fat bike out there. And it was a lot more trouble than doing it in a bathtub, but it was quite an experience. So now I'm just sitting by a fire, warming up. So, but yeah, I think my reception's pretty good here, so we should be able to chat without any problems.
How often are you doing that? Is that kind of once a week type deal, or are you getting in the cold bathtub, or?
So I take a cold shower every day, and then the cold tub usually once a week. And it's sort of something I try to do with friends, like make it a bit of an event, and any excuse to have a couple beers with buddies, and that's always a good one. So
Do you have a beverage of choice when it comes to beers?
We have so many good craft beers up in my neck of the woods. Actually, I did a bike trip across Canada with my daughter and her boyfriend and 3 of their friends this spring, and there's a lot of microbreweries in this country, as I'm sure there are in your guys, in the Garden State. Are you guys both in the Garden State?
No, we're actually not we're from the Garden State, but we're a little bit further south. Jimmy's in Florida right now, and I'm in South Carolina.
Oh, it's amazing technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did some investigating to find out why they called it the Garden State. So
yeah, we actually have some farms, but everyone thinks of like Snooki and Tony Soprano, but we are also known for our Jersey tomatoes and some other things as well.
Yeah, I looked through your guys' catalog. Wow. Congratulations on, having so many podcasts and the diverse range of guests that you have. I really am honored to be invited onto the podcast. You've had some amazing people on, so hopefully I can offer the listener something valuable. I'll do my best.
Well, we are super stoked to have you, sir. I know you did some investigating, just to kind of let you know where we're coming from. We're both athletes. Rich, ultra runner. I grew up wrestling and doing jiu-jitsu, and I actually got into kettlebells during like my CrossFit days, and I got certified by Steve Maxwell, and that was kind of my education on kettlebells. And then I just finished film school, and I hadn't been working out much. I've been getting more into the earthing and the sun gazing and that type of stuff. But now that I'm done with school, I'm getting some muscle back on my body. And down here in Florida, I got all my kettlebells, so I decided to get back on the kettlebell type workouts. And I like I said, I had that Steve Maxwell base, but I wanted to kind of get into something new. And I remember back in the day you were on Rogan and he was always talking about how awesome your cardio workouts were. So I decided to get extreme kettlebell, get that whole set. And you've been kicking my butt every day. And this morning, because I knew you were coming on, I did the 12 Days of Christmas, the single kettlebell one. And on Saturday, I did the double. So you've been kicking my butt, sir.
Oh, that is a, man. Well, thank you. That's great to hear. Yeah, that is, that 12 Days of Christmas, man, I tell you, I'd only do that one. Well, I always do it at Christmas and maybe 3 times a year. That's sort of like, it's a good benchmark workout to see how fast you can whip through it and see how what weight you can use. And I do like that one. It always leaves a guy feeling like he's being challenged. So,
well, I think I'm tough, and then I see you doing it on the sand, and I'm like, I'm not that tough, especially doing the squat kicks. Those are killer. Those don't look like much, and then you do them and throw some overhead squats in with that. Want to kind of pick your brain on some techniques and stuff, but I guess a good place to start is you're in Canada, you're by the lake. You told us you just went for a cold plunge and you had to cut a hole in the ice. But if you look at your Instagram and you look at all your videos, you're always on a sunny beach. So are you taking vacations to go create content?
I'm really lucky. My wife's parents have a place in Hawaii, and we did discover a place in Costa Rica quite a while ago when our kids were little. Like when they were really small, we do the all-inclusive Mexico resort thing, which was awesome. I would highly recommend it. But once they got to be teenagers, we wanted to do some more adventurous type things. So so we found Costa Rica was kind of perfect because there wasn't much there. You kind of had to make your own fun. So the kids learned how to surf and lots of running through the jungle, and it was so probably I guess to answer your question, I like to do like the videos I put on YouTube on the beach because it looks a little bit cooler than my studio. And I think like I love reading YouTube comments, negative and positive, and some people I think actually think I live on the beach, and it's not the truth. But I guess sort of in the summertime, like this is, a Canadian beach, so not quite as nice as Santa Monica or Hawaii, but it's pretty good. But I like to do my videos in the sand and. Well, and you know how it is on vacation, you have a little bit more time. So I get bored easily if I'm not busy. So I'm sure you guys know what it's like when you're putting together a podcast. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into it. So certainly with the video editing and getting everything arranged and making sure that it looks somewhat polished takes a lot of work. So I like to do that on vacation. And then I have lots of time for it.
Do you have people that are helping you with your videos and your content, your editing and all that sort of stuff? Or are you doing that still?
I'm just solo. I tried back, and I'm sure there's more accessibility for people nowadays, but back then it was. I had a couple kids, that lived in their mom's basement come and help me out, but it was always so much of a pain in the butt. So I just sort of learned how to do it myself. And I'm certainly not an expert, but I can kind of get the job done. And I'm like, I go back and forth. Like part of me I could put out more content if I had somebody helping me out. But sometimes I think it's more authentic and from the heart if I do it all myself. And I can't even get my daughter or my wife to hold the camera for me. So it's like, it's a one-man show. And sometimes it's frustrating. Like today when I was out on the ice, like I thought, oh God, it'd be nice if I had someone holding the camera. But and actually my wife did come out because she was worried about me. So but most of my stuff is it's all just me, and which is probably why I don't put out as much content as I would like. But I'm kind of I actually just watched some guys in a seminar in Edmonton that were quite inspiring, and they kind of got me thinking that I should get back on the horse and start producing some more stuff, because I think there are a lot of people out there that just have simple questions like how to squat and how to do this and how to do that. And there's lots of things that I just take for granted from doing kettlebells for 20 years and being a physical therapist for 25 years. And that sometimes I think if I just shared some more stuff, that it might be valuable for people. So I'm motivated, and you know what? I'd like to say it's because I don't have enough time. I'm busy, but the honest truth is it's just time management. So I'm not going to use that one as an excuse.
So watching your content and being a fan of yours, you always talk about action before inspiration, and kind of listening to you there, you seem pretty motivated. And the fitness kettlebell instructor videos, that's a hobby, right? You just said you're a full-time physical therapist. So how do you keep yourself moving? I know you just came off an injury like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
How do you stay motivated when stuff like that happens and be Keith Weber?
Honestly, I feel so bad if I'm not exercising, and it can't be just any sort of exercise. It can't be just like, oh, I'm going for a walk or a bike ride. It's got to be at least every second day or 3 days a week. I need to kill myself to feel as good as I know I can. And otherwise, I just don't feel like I feel really, I'm not going to say I feel depressed or anxious, but I do. I mean, I feel, compared to how I feel like a really hard workout, like say the 12 days of Christmas, that one will last me that day if I do it in the morning, and then half of the next day. Like I'll be like riding this natural high, and then, the next morning it's like, okay, time to take my drugs again. And the only way I can really get that feeling is to do something super intense. And kettlebells for me are just the most convenient way for sure, but also just the most gentle on the body in terms of how much pounding you have on the joints. It's just really, you can get your heart rate up super high, as well as you can work your muscles really hard, and you're working your cardio, and it's just an all-in-one type of thing. And so that's how I try to create my workouts. I try to make it so that you don't have to stop your set just because your shoulder's tired. Like, it's like, oh my God, my left side's so tired. And it's like, well, let's switch sides, and I try to make it so that you can go as long as you can until you basically, like, you've reached max heart rate, and you fought through the fatigue long enough, and then you have to take a little bit of a break. So, and then the cool thing with kettlebells, it's so easy to manipulate the variables. So if you're having a day where you're maybe a little bit tired and you want to, sort of loosen up, and you can grab a lighter kettlebell, take shorter rest breaks. But if you have a day where you're feeling awesome and you really want to, you really want to challenge yourself, you can go with a heavier kettlebell and just do your best. Like, it's, I just love it. And then all the other stuff I do is sort of the rewards of doing kettlebells. Like if I go mountain biking with buddies, I can keep up. If I, go play hockey, I can keep up. Like I feel like the kettlebells are my foundation for my mental health, my physical health. And I still I talked to a guy, I love this guy, but I'm lucky. I get to talk the best thing about having these videos, I get to talk to a lot of people that follow me, and, I get to answer questions or just find out about where their minds are at. And this guy was like, oh man, I'm bored with kettlebells. And I'm like, really? I mean, well, how does that happen? Like, there's so many different variations. Like, you can do double kettlebells, you can do single kettlebells. And I guess at the end of the day, like, I I guess it's possible to get bored of anything, but I feel like with kettlebells, it's just, I mean, you can mix it up. You can go light and do, like I said, like you can do shorter rest breaks. But I find that feeling of like being breathless and just, you're gasping for air and then, okay, you revive yourself and you recuperate and boom, on to the next set. I love that. I love that sort of, and usually I find an hour is like a good length of time, and you might have spiked your heart rate 10, 15 times in that hour over. It reminds me of hockey practice when I was a kid. And then when you're done, you just feel amazing. Like it's just, whereas other things, like I'm sure, like I hear guys doing jujitsu, and that sounds awesome. And I have the impression that it's probably a similar type of a cardio, like you're wrestling and you're just like breathless and you're trying to overcome that fatigue. And I kind of want to get into that, but right now my life's, again, I'm not going to use the busy excuse, but I feel like I can slide kettlebells in really conveniently and still be still have time for other things like work and my businesses and stuff like that, but I can still get my fix that I need, and I don't have to leave the house. Yeah, I love it. I'm so glad I discovered it, because the only thing I could think of that comes close to kettlebells in terms of cardio is the assault bike, because there is another example of an exercise where you wish your arms and legs would give, your legs start burning. Well, use your arms more. Oh God, my arms are tired. Oh my God, and then your heart is just, you get to the point where you could probably blow your heart up. It's incredible. And like, I really feel like that type of, VO2 max training is what elicits that, like a true endorphin rush. Like every exercise does create that drug-like effect, but I feel like that max heart rate training really accomplishes it the best. And then, I sound like I'm drunk. I think I'm still shivering a little bit from the leg.
I was gonna say, you sound like you're really cold.
Well, and they say, I did a couple seminars and they said that you're not supposed to warm up in a sauna or a hot tub. They said you don't get the effects. And I'm like, I knew it. I knew it. Nothing in life comes easy. I was hoping the guy would say, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. But because if someone asked that, and I'm like, he's like, yeah, no, it's your brown fat, your brown adipose tissue doesn't get activated and it doesn't develop if you just go and sit in a hot tub. I'm like, bummer. So, but anyway, the problem with the assault bike compared to kettlebells is you're in this linear, like you're kind of like a hamster on a wheel. So you're not really developing mobility. You're developing obviously wicked cardio, but you're not really, that's about it, right? Whereas with kettlebells, you can have your cake and eat it too, right? You can improve your shoulder mobility and your core stability. All this, we all know this. I mean, anyone who's done kettlebells, you know, like doing an overhead squat sucks. Like what a horrible exercise. But if you can do an overhead squat, your shoulders got to be healthy. Your hips have to be healthy. You have to have good core. So, it's like an all-encompassing type of exercise. So I just love it. I really do.
I guess two things. One would be, when you go on your epic vacations, are you lugging around a kettlebell with you, or do you have them stashed in different places in Hawaii and Costa Rica?
He buries them in the sand.
Oh man, yeah, I know. Joe gave me heck about that. He was like, "Oh yeah, you should carry the kettlebell everywhere," and I'm like, and it was his podcast, so I didn't want to say, well, yeah, but if you saw how hard my workouts are in Hawaii, you'd bury it in the sand too. But no, it was okay. So in Hawaii, I've got a few stashed in my mother-in-law's closet. She has a condo there. Her and my father-in-law. I call it my mother-in-law's condo because she essentially, she's got all her souvenirs and stuff there. So that's awesome. I've got two 16 kilos, a 20 kilo, a 24 kilo, 24, and an 8 and a 10, and a 12. And my daughter now, she's 23. The minimum she uses now is a 12. So, but when she was a little girl, like a little kid, she used the 8 and the 10. try to get my wife to do kettlebells. The only time she does kettlebells is when she's moving them to clean. So it's so frustrating. And it's just, I think that's how it is when you're married. So I'm sure you guys, are you guys married?
No.
Can you relate? Okay. Well,
lone wolves.
Well, I'm sure someday if you do get married, you'll see what I mean. But no, but it's all good. And then in Costa Rica, okay, so the first kettlebell video, the first two videos, I had to lug a 20 kilo and put it in fragile luggage on the plane. And I chose 20 kilo because that's kind of the perfect size kettlebell for, the higher rep cardio, like 10 on the left, 10 on the right, 10 on the left, 10 on the right. It's almost, I think for most guys, that's like the perfect weight. And then it just happens to be the maximum size of luggage you can take or put in fragile at the time. Anyway, it was. So, so I just put my kettlebell in a backpack and then back then before the internet, like I think I filmed Extreme One back in 2005. You couldn't just show somebody on the phone, hey, this is kettlebells. Like people would be like, oh my God, what is this thing? So I'd always bring Pavel's book along with me and I'd say, hey, this is what this guy's doing. And they'd be like, oh, really? Okay. So whereas nowadays it's not as much of a hassle, but it's preferable to have kettlebells wherever I go. And it's really cool because we went traveling to England and the UK, like Scotland and everything a couple years ago, and I couldn't believe like practically every gym had a really good set of kettlebells there. So even Portugal, a few gyms we went to there had kettlebells. So it was definitely not like it used to be. They've become mainstream for sure. So
Keith, I'm also curious. You said you've been at it for 20 years with the kettlebells, which is a good bit longer than I think anyone I know. That even some of the MMA guys or the wrestling guys that have been around in Russia and those sorts of things. So I'm curious, what does your journey look like? What does your evolution look like? I know we talked to Steve Maxwell a year or two ago, and he had kind of gone full circle with his thoughts and stance on the kettlebell as he's gotten older. So I'm just curious of what that journey has been like for you as you've gotten older, and how we get older, injuries pop up, and have things changed at all? Have you modified things, or are you still, because of your physio background and your movement and all that stuff, has that helped as well?
Yeah, honestly, my underlying philosophy for my personal underlying philosophy for anti-aging is if I can do Extreme One with the same weight that I used under the same circumstances, like a hot beach with like doing kettlebells in the deep sand sucks. Like it's you might as well just like on like a good solid surface. It's like it's 2 to 4 kilograms heavier. It's terrible. But it's probably good for your reflexes and your balance and everything like that. So, but I don't like, I know some people, I know Steve thinks that, there's some potential for injury there and everything like that. And I think definitely that's possible. There's potential for, but for me as a physio, and the weights that I use, I go relatively heavy for Turkish get-ups, but that's about it. Like, most of the time I'm using 24, like for Extreme 4, I use 24 for the singles, and that's low rep. That's 5 reps on the left, 5 reps on the right. So like, I don't feel like I'm damaging myself. I think with kettlebells, form is important, like with anything. And I think maybe that's how people could fall it. I don't know, because the problem is kettlebells have a self-correcting mechanism. Like you literally can't do an overhead squat incorrectly. Like you can try, but you'll you just won't be able to do it if you're not using correct form. I mean, I don't get mad if somebody's doing an overhead squat with a slightly bent arm, but I wouldn't call that unsafe. At all of these exercises, even a swing, like, I mean, I've seen people do the swing improperly a lot, but it's a relatively lightweight. So I really don't, what really scares me is when I see these young kids in the gym, they're so strong and they're doing touch and go deadlifts with 400 pounds. Like that, to me, that's a completely different thing than doing 50 pounds on the swings with the kettlebell. So, but as far as my evolution goes, my training philosophy hasn't changed a ton. In fact, I think I'm trying to figure out ways to increase variety in my workouts so that I can extend that length of time that I'm working out, like within reason. I mean, I don't like working out all day, but I want to squeeze as much as I can into an hour and 15 minutes as I can. Because that's, for me, that's kind of the physiological limit where I feel like, okay, that's like, I'm exhausted, I'm shaking, like, yeah, I'm done. And fortunately, I do teach a once a week class, which is, I try to make this class so hard that people don't come back. And the people that do come back are super awesome people. And if you saw these people, you wouldn't believe it. You'd think, oh, she looks like an ordinary mom. But when you get a kettlebell in her hand, she becomes this wild beast and just like wants her once a week fix. And that is like the best population to work with, I think, are these moms that need this stress relief, and they want to just have like a session where they're just like really pushing themselves. And there's the odd husband that gets dragged along too, but they usually don't last. And there's a couple of guys that I know that are going through some rough times, and they come back to class. So these people, they're like perfect for testing out my routines. And then if they can do it and I can do it, then I think, okay, well, I'm sure that somebody on YouTube will like this kind of thing. And I mean, it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to work that hard, but sometimes I think that a lot of people would like it if they just had a method that was sort of tried and true. And so that's what I'm trying to provide. Like, I want to, because I'm just a really average guy. Like, I'm not gifted or anything like that, but kettlebells have helped me, I think, get closer to my potential than I otherwise would have been able to. So as far as my training philosophy, it hasn't changed a heck of a lot. I mean, and I see so many different trends come and go, and I feel like you can never go wrong with hard work. And if it's sensible and it's not damaging, and again, I really believe kettlebells are hard on the muscles but easy on the joints. I know I'm living proof. Like, my right knee is not great. It doesn't have a lot of cartilage in it, but the kettlebells actually feel good. Like, they actually make my knee feel way better. Whereas if I jump around or play tennis or go running, my knee gets a little bit cranky. So, and that's the good thing. The kettlebells, there's not a lot of impact. So, if a person does have arthritic knees, they can still do kettlebell. They can still be in wicked shape. They just might not be able to run a marathon. So, and so right now, my pet project is to come up with the ultimate program combining barbells and kettlebells. And I think I know how to do it, because there's certain things that kettlebells miss out on. Like, if all you did were kettlebells, I think you'd be fine. But if you want to have everything, you want to have like an impressive chest, and you want your arms to look good in a t-shirt, I think you need a little bit more than just kettlebells. Some people might argue with that, but I think barbells, if you're trying to build up muscle and like have like a impressive physique, that's they're a little bit more suited towards that. So yeah, so I'm experimenting on myself and my daughter's boyfriend, and we're sort of working out. And I also want this program to be something that you can do at home. You don't need a whole lot of equipment. So yeah, so we're integrating, and it's boring. It can't be boring too. It's got to be fun to do, kind of like kettlebells. So we're sort of doing this sort of circuit training stuff right now. And so I want to create a plan that is really simple and it works on me. And it's just, it doesn't interfere with your kettlebells, but the kettlebells don't interfere with your barbell training. So yeah, so there's like things like bench press, dips, pull-ups, like there's none of that in kettlebells. And I think those are important movements. Heavy deadlifts done correctly, I think there's a lot of value to those. And I think that might actually help a person, protect themselves against harm from kettlebells if that's possible. And just things like that. So I guess that would be the evolution of my training right now. Like I'm actually realizing that I'm getting a bit older and I want to gain as much, like I feel like this next 10 years of my life are crucial. And so I want to build as much strength as I can in the next few years, naturally. And then see how it goes from there. And I also want to show other people, like a lot of guys my age, a lot of old friends of mine that are coming back into my life, they're in really rough shape. Like they're in terrible physical shape. So I guess that's the other thing I like about kettlebells. You could actually learn how to do kettlebells when you're older. It'd take a bit longer, but you can do it. And then I really think that would be a good foundation to build up on other things. But because I just see so many guys my age that have just sort of packed it in and just say, I'm too old for this. And all they do is golf and drink beer, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But again, like I said initially, that doesn't make me happy. Like I like golfing and drinking beer, but I need my fix. Otherwise I'm just not as happy. And I think a lot of people are like that. I don't think I'm the only one. I just think that a lot of people haven't discovered how good it feels to really, really push yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you there too, Keith. If I'm not kind of scratching that itch, I'm getting into trouble in other places in my life. So I totally agree with you there. You mentioned that kettlebells correct themselves and that the overhead squat is something with the kettlebell that it's kind of hard to do wrong or you just can't do it. And it's funny you bring that up because today doing 12 days of Christmas, I noticed my overhead squat with the single arm is kind of like it's like a hybrid between a squat and a windmill. So I'm curious if you have any kind of correction for that to kind of keep my body square and keep that free side from kind of turning a little bit.
Right. Are you looking at the kettlebell when you do overhead squats?
I am.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do, and the body will go where the head goes. So for the windmill, very important to crank your neck around and look at that kettlebell. Same with the Turkish get up. But for the overhead squat, you want to, and I like training with mirrors because then I can really check my form. So I look straight ahead, and that'll help 50%. The other 50% is a lot of us have stiff ankles, and I'm pretty sure that's just how it is. Like, I don't think you can really improve your ankle flexibility a ton. So the solution to that is just go with a wider stance. So when I'm doing overhead squats, I use a sumo, more of a sumo stance. And then when I'm doing my other squats, I bring my feet in a little bit closer together like I would with a regular barbell squat. And it's a little bit of a cheat, but I think, oh, wow, this is awesome. Like when I'm doing overhead squats, I'm actually working my body a little bit differently than I'm not doing the exact same pattern of squat every time. So I think there's a lot of benefit to that. And then the other one that would be good is if that doesn't, I don't like standing on a 2x4 to raise your heels, especially in the middle of a kettlebell class. So, but that is one where that helps a lot of people. And to be honest, like for my videos, when I'm in the sand, I'll actually kind of cheat a bit. So I'll kind of weasel my feet into the sand so that I'm not quite on tiptoe, but my heels are elevated. and it makes it look like I'm just like a squatting king. And to be honest, the only reason is because I've taken the ankle out of the equation, and yeah, like I'm just using the sand to my benefit, because that's about the only benefit you derive from training in sand. The rest of it is just awful. My God, it's just a horrible experience in the beautiful Hawaiian sand.
I think I might need to get the weightlifting shoes out for my overhead squats, because those always tend to give me a little bit of a cheat. So I'll definitely, because I'm going pretty wide, but like you said, I have pretty tight ankles.
Yeah,
so that's the issue I'm running into.
A friend of mine who's like a pretty good coach. He trains like a lot of bodybuilders and stuff like that. So, but he was talking about how it's good to do calf raises before you do squats, because it mobilizes the ankle. And so I started doing that a few years ago. So if I have a chance, like I'll usually arrive to class a little bit early, and I'll just do some one-legged. I won't go to the point where I'm, my calves are shaking, but I'll do, say, 3 sets to failure on each leg with a relatively heavy kettlebell, and I'll like really, accentuate the stretch at the bottom. And I find that works like a charm. And then when we get into class, I'm just like, oh God, like it makes a huge difference with how you squat. So that's one tip that I would, and plus the calves are arguably one of the most neglected body parts or muscles in the body. So I think it's never a bad idea to flesh out those calves and work them. I'd say, like, I did an experiment on myself one time. I worked on my calves every day for 3 months. And it was during my first midlife crisis. I did a physique show. I just always wanted to do something like that, just to put myself out there, just to see what it would be like. And I knew that the only part of my leg that would be seen, because we got to wear board shorts, were my calves. And trust me, that they're not my most impressive body part. So I freaked out. I'm like, oh my God. So I thought, well, what's going to happen, right? Either I couldn't think of a worst case scenario. So I worked my calves as hard as I could. Some days 5 sets, some days 10 sets, but every day for at least 3 months. And my calves never felt better. And they actually, okay, I'm not going to say they got like huge, but they did look different. They did look better. Like they looked more fit. Let's put it that way.
Standard toes forward calf raises?
Yeah, I would do standing calf raises, machine calf raises, seated calf raises, body weight calf raises. Like, one of my favorite things is to go up the stairs and do, as many as I can with the left, and then as many as I can with the right, and then back to the left, back to the right, and just sort of, usually like when I started, I'd peter out about the 5th stair, and then, I could tell I was making progress when I could make it up all 10 stairs. And, it's just a way to progress yourself linearly without, like, I try to make things as fun as I can. So, but yeah, that helps a lot, getting the ankles lubricated and stretched out before you squat, for sure.
Rich, you don't need any help with nicer calves. I need all that extra calf accessories.
Yeah. Some people just have beautiful calves. Like, they're just born with it.
Yeah, Rich definitely was. We got the calves in our family. So, Keith, you bring up warming up with with some calf raises to get ready for those overhead squats. Another one of your methods that I've really grown to like, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't like warming up. I don't know too many people who do, but the 5 rites is money, because I can get it done super quick. I can connect to my breath. I heard Steve Maxwell back in the day said there's some spiritual aspects to it. So I'm curious to kind of how you fell upon the 5 rites and the power in it for you.
Oh, I was meant to discover the 5 rites. I remember when I started being a physical therapist, and again, before the internet. And I remember a few people that I treated that I see every once in a while that they did a lot of traveling, and they're just cool older people. And they would always there were a couple of them that would talk about the five rites, and I was like, what are they talking about? And I was visiting another guy that I was lucky. I've gotten to meet a lot of interesting people through work, but I was visiting him, and he had this book on his coffee table. And I'm like, oh, what's that book? And he goes, oh, it's the book with the five rites in it. You want it? You can have it. And so I'm what? Thank you. So we were in Hawaii. I took the book with me and I read. You could read this book. Have you read the book?
I have
The
not.
Ancient Secret of the Fountain of Youth. It's such an awesome book. It's like a little thin paperback, and it was written back in the 40s by a guy named Peter Kelder, who's actually an American guy. But yeah, it's like the book. Obviously, the five rites are the showcase exercises, but all the little tidbits of wisdom and everything in the book are just it's a really good book. I read it probably once a year just because it's fun to read, and it tells the story of Colonel Bradford, who came back from the First World War a broken man, and then the guy, the author, didn't see him for a year, and then he came back, his hair would grown back and all. Of course it's probably a little bit of a fabricated story, but it's such an interesting book. So for me, everything about the five rites, it makes sense. Like the spinning, you're working your vestibulo-ocular reflex. The second one, where you're stretching out your hamstrings while you're working your abs, while you're working your neck muscles, and so on. Like the third one, you're bending backwards and just opening everything up. And like, it's kind of like they've taken all the good poses from yoga and then just sort of condensed them into this really cool, convenient routine. And the thing is, what keeps me going with the five rites is not only how it makes me feel, but when I show friends of mine how to do it, they can't even do it. Like and I'm like, oh boy. But the process of adaptive shortening is happening to all of us. And so if you have a convenient sequence of exercises that you can use to prevent that, wow. Like, and I've looked at different warm-ups and different routines, and it's the most comprehensive one, I think. And it makes the most sense because you're getting a lot of strengthening when you're doing 21 of those dive bomber push-ups. I mean, that's quite a bit. And yeah, it's good for shoulder mobility. It's just, it's a wonderful routine, and it's easy to teach. Most people can do it. And yeah, you're right. Like in 5 minutes, you can be ready to roll. Because I'm like you, don't like warming up. I don't like extended warm-ups that don't make any sense and that just seem to waste time. I just want to get the warm-up done and get to the good part. I'm glad you like them, because a lot of people don't like that kind of thing.
No, I really enjoy it. I was, doing a lot of yoga and a lot of Kriya yoga prior to getting back into kettlebells, and I feel like it's that mixture that kind of keeps me on that same wavelength, and it's perfect bang for your buck. I believe you have a video out there that says it takes 6 minutes, if you do it right and take your time, and you're ready to rock and roll.
I did a video of I kind of did an extended version of the five rites. I guess you could call it the 10 or the 11 rites, but of course it starts out with the five rites. Then you've got number 6 is the Cossack squats. And then I sort of have a few other moves, which is good if you're just like on vacation and that's all you're going to do that day. And some of the comments, I did one and I didn't add any music to it. And it just, I don't know, I thought it was pretty good. And the one comment was this guy goes, "That's the most bizarre thing I've seen all day." And so I kind of watched the video. I'm like, it is kind of bizarre, actually. Like when you don't put any music to something and you don't talk and you just sort of do the whole routine. It was sort of meant to be a follow along version of it. I was like, yeah, if I didn't know what this was, I just think, who's this weirdo like doing this routine? So, but yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a big fan of warming up either, but I know as a quickly approach 48 that my body needs some sort of lubrication before I head out either to the gym or to the trails or on the road to get in a run. And so something like that 5 or 10 minute kind of full body mobility, just lubricating the joints is just what the doctor ordered, and I can usually get out the door and get going and feel pretty good right from the jump.
Yeah, like see, my philosophy on mobility work and stretching is the same as flossing. Like nobody in their right mind would floss for an hour and a half every Saturday. But you do a little bit every day to prevent all that crud from building up in your joints. Same with on your gum line. So to me, a little bit every day is far more advantageous than just stretching once in a while. And I usually do the 5 rites at some point earlier in the day. And then I'll do like a nighttime stretching routine right before I go to bed, which I finally made it a habit. It takes me a long time to make things that are good for me a habit. Bad things, I could create a habit of that really quickly, but good things, it usually takes me a few tries. And now I'm on a roll. Like I think I get down on one knee and I start by stretching my hip flexors, and then I go back and stretch my hamstring. And it's just sort of this quick little flow that I do. And it takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes as well. And I do find the next day when I do the 5 rites, I'm like, I can tell I stretched last night before bed because the 5 rites are actually easier to do. And I feel less stiff when I get out of bed. And I feel like I do relax better, like when I do finally lay down. And I did a seminar with, he was Lance Armstrong's, I think he was one of the trainers when he did his runs, all his Tour de France victories. And I forget what his name was, but anyway, I was lucky enough to did this seminar for entrepreneurs. And, but he said, if I only tell you only remember one thing I say, it's stretch before you go to bed. And he kind of went on to explain how, all the advantages of it. Everything from your nervous system is fatigued by the time you go to bed. So it's way easier to get into like in a really effective range of stretching because your nervous system isn't freaking out. Like in the morning when you touch your toes, you can tell, oh God, you feel stiff. But at night, your Golgi tendon organs, all these organs that are protecting you against the stretch reflex, they're tired. So you can get a lot more out of stretching right before bed. And there's a lot of studies on yoga showing that it does help you achieve deeper sleep, but I don't think you need to do an hour of yoga before you go to bed. I think all those studies show is that a bit of stretching probably calms the autonomic nervous system and allows you to just sort of relax a little bit more quickly, which makes sense, right? Because you're just stretching's done properly is quite relaxing. So I'd advise that too. 5 rites and then stretching before bed. That's my thing I've been harping on lately to people. So, because I know it's helped me so much.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I tend to roll out before I go to bed. But I'll definitely get on some more stretching. Stew season in Canada, and I know you say you like to eat a lot of stews in the winter. And I know you said your wife is an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I've heard you speak on certain foods that are good for the body and that aren't good for the body. So I just kind of get into maybe 2 of your favorite stew recipes and kind of your nutritional protocol.
Yeah, I'd like to give you a specific recipe. I really would, but like my wife's soups are just they're never the same. They're always different, and we're really lucky because we're part of this sort of organic farm cooperative where you kind of you give them your money every week and you get a couple bags of random vegetables that are grown organically, and so we just sort of make sure that we never throw vegetables in the garbage. So it's like, holy man, we got a lot of onions. Okay, I guess we're putting a lot of onions in the soup. So it's basically just like water and a lot of vegetables, and my wife's, she does add meat to the soup as well, so that gives it a lot of flavor as well. So it's just basically a big stew of like vegetables, and it's easier to digest. I know that for a fact. I rarely eat salads. Whenever I do, I kind of get a gut ache. And then, I feel like I'm getting a ton of nutrition when I'm eating this soup, which is usually my first meal of the day. I'll have a big bowl of the soup, and then I'll take it to work. It's really easy to eat at work. And then by supper, I'm pretty much done with soup. I don't want any more soup, so I'll have something different. And at my age, like, I don't eat a huge supper anymore. Like, it's not like we're not very traditional. Like, we don't all sit around the table and have like huge suppers. It's usually, you just sort of grab something from the fridge, and everyone's got a different eating style. So
I guess the one question I would ask, Keith, is for you mentioned some of our friends, high school classmates and stuff that have maybe hit the wall or have given up on certain aspects. And, I've had friends say, well, I have to get in shape before I could come train with you, as a personal trainer and stuff like that. They're like, well, I need to get in shape before I can actually come do what you're doing. So I'm curious if you had any advice other than just get started and get moving, for people that are, kind of in that 45 to 55 range that have maybe let themselves go a little bit, but know that they need to, like you said, those next 10 years of building muscle is really important. If you had maybe some advice for gentlemen of our age getting started, getting back into it.
So I've been experimenting with my theories on a friend of mine that actually lives in England, and he was in real rough shape. So what I started with, because his big thing was he wanted to lose weight. And I said, I get that. I know you want to lose weight, but you need to do something to help your body accomplish that. And if you start running at your weight, like the guy, he's the same size as me and he weighs 250 pounds. Like, that's not going to last very long. So what I did was I started out with 5 rites, which you can imagine that was almost impossible for him. So we kept working on the 5 rites, and I said, walk, like go out and like walk everywhere, do stairs, like never take the, all that kind of stuff. Just get as much like extra exercise as you can. And then we started out with the Turkish get-ups. And the Turkish get-ups are great because you're kind of doing a windmill with the Turkish get-up, and you can add a windmill when you stand up, and you can add an overhead squat. And he would use a pole with one hand. He'd hold onto a pole and do the overhead squats and the windmills using the pole as a support, which I was like, that's a great idea. And then once we kind of got that down, then we started doing things like squats, and we started lunges and just sort of adding things in with the kettlebells. And then I started putting things into sets, so that we do like 5 different types of squats in one set, 5 reps per side. Kind of the same thing as Extreme 4, the fourth video. Day 1 and 2 of Extreme 4 are basically what we're doing right now. And it's very simple. It's all the fundamental kettlebell exercises, and it's easy to do, but it's still challenging. Like, you're still winded at the end of every set. And that's actually how I train when I'm trying to progress and get more fit. Then the challenge workouts I'll sort of do on my Wednesday night class, but in between times, I will grab a heavy kettlebell and I will do the 5 reps per side. That's sort of how I feel like I'm making progress when I do that. And so I honestly think kettlebells might be the best way to kind of like that entry point into getting fit again, because you're kind of lifting weights and you're kind of doing some high intensity cardio, but you're not like you're not doing wind sprints, and you're not actually having to subject yourself to the dishonor and indignity of going to a public gym where there's a bunch of fit people. Like, you actually do this at home, because I think for a lot of people that's like the most embarrassing thing they can imagine. And I think even if you're fit, sometimes you go to a gym and it's like, oh my God, like, this is not my place. So I think I honestly, I really feel like starting with the Turkish get-ups and then just building on from there, and then teaching the swing the very last exercise a person should learn, because once you've learned how to do lunges and squats, I feel like the swing is a lot more. Then by that point, the person's learned to hinge at the hips, and that person has done enough windmills that they figured out how to, stick their butt back instead of just, do the squatting type swing. And I've tried it with a few people, but my friend in England, he was really out of shape and really uncoordinated, and he's getting there. It's pretty cool to see. So if it works for him, I really feel like it would be, I can't think of a better approach that takes the least amount of time, I guess.
Most bang for your buck. That's what people want these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a learning curve. I know that. Sure. So I really want to put out some videos that just show my best tips and tricks to making it as easy as possible to learn how to do the kettlebells without having to take too much time and frustration.
Well, I look forward to those. I'm a physical education teacher too, so I like sharing that sort of stuff with the kids too, because sometimes I might be saying the exact same thing you're saying, but coming out of my mouth, they don't get it. But if it's on a screen, they're like, oh, light bulb. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, it's true. It's like someone else says it, and then it resonates more. It's just like being married.
Yeah.
The same thing.
Also, I want to thank you for mentioning teaching the windmill first in that hinge opposed to teaching that kettlebell swing first, because I feel like that was always an issue that I had coaching people, trying to get them to hinge. I never thought of doing the windmill to teach a hinge.
And there's so many different types of swings out there. I mean, there's subtleties to it, and they're all basically fine. But man, if you'd never picked up a kettlebell before and you didn't have somebody sort of showing you what they're after, like there's no wonder people get confused. Like it's a very complicated, it's not a complicated exercise at all, but it has the potential to be. So, but it is a hinge. And I mean, the windmill, overhead squat, and the swing, I think those are the three biggest barriers to entry in the kettlebell world, because everything else is, and the clean is a little bit, those are the tricky ones. I mean, they're not that bad, but there's like a few little tricks that you can use, but those are the tough ones when you're trying to show your friend or something how to do kettlebells. It's like, oh my God, like it's, depending on how coordinated a person is, it's challenging.
Well, thank you for your insights and your tips. I'm definitely going to be using them more, and I know our listeners are going to play around with that. So, Keith, we have our last four questions that we ask all our guests.
Yeah.
So the first one I got for you tonight is, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
How do you brew it, and how do you take it?
Okay, so I like the good old when we went to Europe, I really missed my watery black coffee in the pot, and you just pour it in. It's like kind of like black water. I love that. I love a medium roast bean. There's Kicking Horse coffee that we get in Canada. That's like they've got this Pacific pipeline. It's this medium roast bean. They're oily. Hey, they're not overcooked, and it's just a couple cups of that in the morning, and then I'm done. Because I don't know if it's an age thing, but if I have coffee, I think I'm just one of those people. Like there's the slow metabolizers and the fast metabolizers. I think I metabolize caffeine. I'm a slow metabolizer, so it's like the half-life of coffee is something like 7 hours or something. So it's not really out of your system for 14 hours. So if I have a couple cups of coffee in the morning at 6, then by the time I go to bed at 10, it's pretty much out of my system. But if I go out for coffee at noon, I'll wake up honestly at 2 a.m. and I'll be like, what the heck? And so, but I do love my coffee. I quit taking cream and sugar in it, I don't know, 15 years ago, when I put a little bowl beside the coffee maker, and I just for an experiment, if I put 2 teaspoons in my coffee, put 2 teaspoons in the bowl, 2 weeks, the bowl was full. I'm like, holy man, I'm taking in a lot of sugar. So And I love the taste of coffee. I mean, I'll take it any way I can get it, but I do prefer the plain old drip coffee in the paper filter. Nice fine grind.
You a fan of Tim Hortons?
I don't mind it. I know a lot of people like. I'm always surprised by how people love to slag on stuff that's. Everyone's, oh, Tim Hortons coffee is terrible. So it's not bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's okay. It's better than the gas station coffee. I don't mind it. Like if we're on the road and we're like going on a road trip, oh my, you got to stop at Timmy's. So I got to have Timmy's. Or if I'm in a hurry and I'm working out really early, I work out really early Friday mornings. I love going to the Timmy's drive-thru and getting extra large black. Oh, it's it gets the job done. But McDonald's coffee is good too. I have to.
Yeah, McCafe's not that bad. Not that bad. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Keith, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Keith Weber?
Well, I'd say daily cold showers. I mean, I know they talk about the dopamine rush and all that kind of good stuff. It must do something because honestly, I don't think I've missed a day in years now, but when I take a cold shower, man, I feel a lot better. And I feel like I don't like cold showers, but I feel like taking them is a symbol of, just doing something I don't want. Like, kind of like making my bed when I get up. I don't want to do that, but I do anyway, and it makes me feel better. So little things like that, I feel like make me a better person because I'm not. What do they call it? The delay anxiety. You got to make your bed at some point or take the cold shower. So I'm taking away as much anxiety as I can. 5 rites fall into that category. Writing down silly things. For years, I used to write down every morning, like I had 5 goals. And the first one was I want to be the best physical therapist in Red Deer. That's my city. And I just write down these goals. I want to do the best treatments I can on every one of my patients. And I really feel like that one is, it's obviously a subconscious effect, but I think that's very, very important. And I couldn't emphasize that more to people. Just handwriting stuff, not typing it in your phone, but like actually literally handwriting it down on a piece of paper. I think there's so much power in that.
Keith, I definitely feel you on all those. Definitely the writing the goals is something I try to do. And since I've moved here to Florida, we don't really have cold water. So it's kind of killing me because I've been on that cold shower life for a while, but we don't really get cold water down here.
It's true. I know I shouldn't say I haven't missed a day in years because when we travel to like Portugal, for instance, Hawaii, it's not really that cold. It's cool, but it's not cold like we get. Like my shower at work, it's painfully cold. Like I put that on my head and I'm just like, oh, instant freezy headache. So that's definitely something that would be, I guess I do like I think once a week for the ice bath is probably all a person really needs. Like I feel like that's like a weekly ritual that I think could have a huge impact over, 52 ice baths in a year and once a week. I think that would be huge. I think that would be a huge effect.
I've been doing that. I've been going to the local store and getting 80 pounds of ice for an ice bath and submerge myself. And it's way different in that 10 to 15 minute interval, and it takes the rest of the day to warm up, as I'm sure you know because you were just in the lake. But yeah, I've definitely been dabbling in that. So Keith, I'm curious, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Okay, so music, I am, once again, I didn't want to be that guy, but like the 90s for me, I was in my 20s in the 90s, and the music from the 90s, I keep coming back to, and I'm going to blame part of that on Grunge Bible. They're a there's some guys on Instagram, and they always have these awesome videos of 90s stuff. And these guys are just kids. And I don't know how they started loving 90s music so much, but all the bands I loved in the 90s. So I'm really like coming up with playlists like Creed and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and like all the big four from Seattle and all the I'm like huge into 90s music right now. Reading wise, I usually have a nonfiction book on the go and a fiction book. So I'm reading a fiction book about this little town in northern Sweden by a guy named Frederick Backman. And he's the guy that wrote A Man Called Ovi. And I think Tom Hanks, they made a movie out of it. It was so popular. And his writing is just, this guy must be a genius because his writing is so fascinating. And I'm probably going to read all his books eventually. And I find I can get really immersed into the world that he's creating. And then the nonfiction book that I'm plugging my way through, I think it's called Psychocybernetics, something like that. So usually with a book like that, I'll do what they told me to do in a learning course I did when I was in high school. I go and I write down the title of every chapter. So I've gotten to that part. So I just have a basic framework of what's in the book. And then I'll go back and then I'll go through each chapter and write down the main headings of each chapter. Then by the time I'm done all that, I'll go through all the paragraphs, all that kind of stuff. And then I will read the book and I will find I'll absorb the book a lot better. But that's a bit of a process and it does take some time. But for a book like that could be a little bit of a dry read, I find I absorb a lot more out of it that way. So
might have to try that out.
Yeah, like my parents were so awesome. When I was in grade 12, I don't know how much money they spent on this. These guys would come up from the States once a month, and we'd spend the whole weekend learning how to learn. And it was actually, a lot of the techniques that they taught us, I found a book called How to Learn Smarter, How to Study Smarter, Not Harder. And if you guys can't find it, I'll send you the link. I love this book, but when I read through this book, I'm like, oh my God, this is that whole course that I took when I was in grade 12. And you could actually probably change the title to How to Train Smarter and Not Harder, because it's all about consistency, but really cool little techniques that make, absorbing stuff that could potentially be a little bit on the dry side a lot more effective. Yeah. And it's kind of fun. You feel like you've got the secret hack to learning. So yeah, this whole book is full of it. I bought it for my kids and I think they read it. I don't know, but
Cool. We'll check it out. Keith, last one we have for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures?
Oh my God. Too many. Okay. Craft beer. Love craft beer. I mean, I love everything about it. I love the fact that somebody decided to open up their own brewery and maybe experiment with something that's, not everybody will like. And I love going there with buddies, and it's just a good place to go to have a little escape. And because it's beer, you're not going to be walking down the street throwing up in the gutter. You're going to have a couple beer and you're going to carry on with your life, and it's not going to have a long lasting effect. Another guilty pleasure is I do like to play the guitar, and I'd say that's a guilty pleasure because I was taking lessons for a couple years, and I learned so much. And it was so amazing. But it's one thing of my life where I don't want to do lessons, and I just want to play around and fiddle around and get songs off the internet and maybe see something on YouTube and just sort of have something in my life that I love so much, but I'm not forcing myself to do 10 minutes a day, like they say, just sort of doing something for myself. And then, I mean, as far as guilty pleasures, I mean, God, I used to love peanut M&Ms. Oh, I used to love them, but I had to give them up because they kept me awake at night. So, yeah, so I'd have to say my wife is sitting here and she's laughing at me because she's probably has a whole bunch of other things that I like to do. But
do you have a favorite style of beer? A Pilsner, lager, IPA?
Pilsner all the way.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I've yet to find a Pilsner I didn't like. And I love to, I mean, I'm sure you guys are the same. I love going into those boutique liquor stores where they have 10 different types of Pilsners, and it's just like, oh, and they have the single can. So I'll buy one of each and I'll like have like a taste test, and I'll have like a hidden blind. So it's like, I don't know which one's which until I take the thing away. And it's like, yeah, no, I love Pilsners. I don't mind IPAs if I'm going out and I'm just going to sip it for a while. I like IPAs for that. But if I want to crush a couple beers after a bike ride or something, oh man, love Pilsners.
Nice.
Yeah, we've got some good ones up here too.
Do you have a favorite one of the recommendation?
There's a brewery in a town called Lacombe, which is nearby, and it's called Blind Man Brewing, and it's a 5 of Diamonds Pilsner, and the can looks like a 5 of Diamonds fishing lure. It's yellow with like the red diamonds, just like a 5 of Diamonds fishing lure. And I think that the part of the proceeds of buying this beer goes to like helping with the fisheries or fish and wildlife. But even if it wasn't that cool, it tastes so good. I love it. And I'm such a snob because if I can't get it on tap, like pretty easy for me to pass up a beer unless it's really like the occasion. I'd rather actually make the effort to go to a brewery and have it on tap. And then, yeah, I don't really like, I'm at the age where I really don't like to drink to get drunk unless it's a really special occasion. So I like the whole ritual of beer and tea before bed, tea before bed, coffee in the morning. Like I love all those things.
Right on. Well, I appreciate your guilty pleasures, and I do fancy a good craft beer every once in a while myself. So took me a while to get into the Pilsners, but we've had some brewers on, and they say that whenever you go to a new brewery, the best way to tell how good of a brewery is to start with their Pilsner, because if they can do a Pilsner right, they can get everything else right.
Okay, and I noticed when I look back through your catalog, you guys had some beer, some brewers in. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Pilsners take a lot longer, right? They're a lot more complicated, and yeah.
Less ingredients, so it's less things to hide from, It's a very simple but complex beer to brew.
Keith, thank you so much tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the information you bestowed upon us, and thank you for your awesome kettlebell workouts.
Oh man, I appreciate it, and I will advertise the heck out of this podcast because you guys allowed me to really present my message. Better than usual. So, and you asked a lot of really cool questions, and it's fun talking about stuff like guilty pleasures and do you like coffee? I love that kind of stuff. Like no one asks that. That's so cool.
Well, it was great to get to know you, Keith. I love following your stuff on YouTube, and Jimmy always sends me the hard workouts when I'm in need of something, and it's usually one of yours. So it's an honor and a pleasure to chat with you, and we hope you have a great holiday season.
Thank you so much. We're heading back to Hawaii in a couple of weeks. I'm so excited, and I have a real good workout that I think I've got it finalized. So I'm going to practice on the beach until it's ready, and then I'll have that one up.
Awesome.
We're looking forward to it.
Thanks a lot, Jim and Rich. You guys are awesome.
You too. Take care, Keith. Have a good night.
Thank you. You guys too. Thanks for everything.